7 out of the 11 that was sent out.
That's not bad. Pretty solid, actually. All right, so the first thing I always like to do is just if everyone will introduce themselves. Tell me how long you've been fighting or in the game, basically, and if there's anything particular that you were hoping to learn from this class, like issues that you're like, oh, well, hopefully I'll learn this in Reeving. I'd love to know. It's just nice going in to see if there's something that we should spend a little extra time on to make sure all of y'all are getting what you want out of this class. Right, because they've been in the most tournaments and they've been in the most fights. But I think that's not a good or sustainable thing. And I think we have a serious lack of training for people who are interested in it. I think a lot of people would really like to participate in the game, and it's a good place for people to participate and help out. But we need to be making sure we're getting training. So as this is the first time that we teach it, y'all guys are going to be a little bit of our guinea pig. There's going to be a lot of good information. There's no worry about that. How we put it together and everything. Please give us feedback afterwards. If you don't want to do it directly to us, there's the cards that you can take at the end. They'll be where you'll write kind of what you thought of all your classes. It's a general feedback for the entire event. There's a comment section. Please leave comments there because it is something that we're going to be teaching again. It's something that we want to do more training in, so let us know what you think. So kind of how this class is going to go. First of all, this is about turning reeving. If anyone had any questions, we are not going to be talking about field reeving. There's, of course, going to be a lot of crossover, but this will be completely turning focused. We're going to go through sort of the lecture portion of it. There's going to be some back and forth, any questions you have that we'll be talking about at the beginning of the lecture portion. And then towards the end, we're going to be doing a lot of probably the two of us fighting, and we're going to bring people up and we're going to kind of role play through situations so we can learn how to deal with those situations. Okay? So the first thing, it's real simple. Make sure we know the rules of the game, right? There's a surprising number of situations that you're going to come across that a lot of people don't know the rules to, right? A great example that I was bringing up to him. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is so I'm fighting him, right? When we both go in and hit each other in the leg, then I cross over, hit him in the arm, and he hits me in the leg at the same time. Boom. I got hit in the leg, but that's two I haven't dropped yet. I'm now going to drop, and I'm going to take the leg.
So what happened? So what's the rule?
Yeah, you should have said posting or dropped prior to throwing your next shot.
Exactly. I have to do it prior to the next shot. If I'm taking the
Can
shot,
you take the shot as you're dropping? Because that's a big one that gets questioned too.
So, for me, I think that if you were in full drop, that I generally let them take that as a not death, right? Because you were in full drop. But if you were going to post and take a second shot and then drop, that's a death, right? Your shot counted, so did his, right? It's a simple situation that comes across kind of frequently that a lot of people don't really know the rule on, right? Because it goes like this, boom, boom, and I'm dropping down, right? It was just my leg. It's not quite how it works, right? So that's a little thing, but it all comes back to know the rules of your game. It's a simple first step, but it's obviously absolutely imperative. The second thing, and this is going to kind of cover what you were talking about, is this is going to take practice. You're going to have to watch a lot of fights. You're talking about like you're not really sure when a shot is late or not. I could tell you the rule, but honestly, you're probably just not seeing it very well.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And there's no words that I can tell you to make you see it better, right? So I would suggest that if y'all are really serious about this, try to read someone's sparring, right? And let them call their own shot however you want, but you call it too, and just practice to see if you get it right.
In your head, not to them.
And if they're down with it, and you tell them like, hey, I'm going to work on it,
that's okay.
and they're cool with it.
But establish that ahead of time.
Right, establish that ahead of time. But yeah, this is going to take practice. One of the reasons that currently the best Reeves are warlords is it's because the ones there a bee over there?
I don't like bees.
Yeah, freaking out a little. All right. One of the reasons Boilers are currently the best fighters is just because, well, we've had the most practice with dealing with what's late, what's not, seeing it, and practicing.
We've seen the most fights. I mean, not only do we fight a ton, but we sit there and we watch our friends spar. If we have a three-way round robin that we just keep doing winner stays, you sit there and you watch as many fights as you fight.
Right.
So it is just practice unintentional.
So I fully believe you do not need to be a fighter to learn that ability, learn that skill. But I do fully believe that you have to practice if you want to be able to make those high-end calls. And you know, you want, if you're going to be reaving the keep battle, you know, the keep tournament, which is the largest tournament in the year, you don't want to be like, I've never really watched fighting, but I think I've got this, right? You know, you need to have put in a lot of practice.
I know the rules.
Right. And there's going to be no substitute for it.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is sort of what you see and how it works with the human brain and everything. So it turns out, I don't want to get deep into the studies, but basically, in between what you see and how it's registered in your brain, there's a ton of information that is lost. But your brain will take what it sees and piece it together into its own image, right? So you're not actually picking up and constantly seeing all this motion and everything that hits. It's taking things like the sound, the movement, what you see afterwards, and creating all of these in-betweens and basically putting a picture together in your head, okay? The reason this is kind of important is you have to understand that what you see is not actually the best information, okay? You might get it right, but you might get it wrong even if you think you saw it, okay? This goes into a couple of parts that I think is really important in reaving. Number one, try your best to use everything, all the senses at your disposal, mainly sound, okay? The more you fight, the more you'll realize that there is a very different sound between, in fact, I might just grab my shield real quick.
There are much different impacts to a graze. There's a different impact to a leather belt, to a cloth belt, and you can hear that to a tabard or a body. And you can tell the difference of that, and sometimes you can tell whether it is a body above the waist or below the waist just because of that.
Right, so why don't you swing at my shoulder so that I'm barely blocking and then you're hitting me. Okay, now, you see how there's a very different sound to my body versus my shield? Now, learning to hear that along with what you see is going to make you a much better and much more accurate caller of shots. Because the problem with a lot of these shots is, did that hit him? It's real hard to tell, right? I would tell you I didn't hit him even though I'm almost touching him. If you're relying on your sight alone to figure out if I hit you right here, you're almost in a guessing game, right? So those other tells like sound, like seeing what the opponent's reaction is, right? If you see them get hit and they go, oh, you know, like you're on that, right? You hear it, you see it, you have to use all the keys or all the different little tells that you're getting to be the best caller, right?
And some of those you might have the guy who it comes over and you see it right here, and then that tell he's talking about, he throws his shield down as it was an arm. You saw where that shot was. How's that an arm?
Right.
Right?
Right. So
That's a really common one too.
It is a very common one, which is why I wanted to point it out.
right, and it is common, and as we're about to go into, basically, I would tell you that it's not. I would not call that person a cheater, right? That person who throws his arm down, and we'll talk about that later when we're going into the psychology, but it's one of the most important things is to realize these are high pressure situations. Just like you might make a bad call, they might make a bad call, and just like you're going to make a bad call that you believe was a good call, they may make a bad call that they believe was a good call, right? So What's like that?
I mean, if you've been fighting long enough, you've been hit in the shoulder, and you've dropped the sword, and you're like, no, I'm dead, I'm sorry. But you're just used to, when you get over in that area, you want to change and go as fast as possible, and then you realize it was on the verge, and you're like, no, I'm dead. Well, they might have just made that wrong call, and that's up to you to correct them.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of some of the stuff going into the fight. Now we're going to say, basically now getting into the fight and how we're starting. The first thing that we're going to talk about is, I wrote it down as establishing dominance and expectations. Now, that's a little bit of a harsh word, right?
It's true.
This should be a calm authority type thing. The last thing you want to do is go at it from a position of power, right? But we'll go further into that in psychology. But so when we're talking about established dominance and expectations, right? When you have two people come to your ring, you don't want to sit back, have the two people come to your ring, go like, okay, let's go ahead, boom, 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 okay, nice, boom, 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 cool, I got it, right? It's not the sort of reeving that you want to be doing, right? In order to be a good reeve, you want to take control of that fight pretty early on. They come in, they go, okay, y'all are good. If you go to the two sides, all right. Are both y'all ready? Excellent. Lay on, right? Let them fight. The second it's done, you go, okay, stop, back up. That's 1-0. All right, ready? Lay on, right? Make sure you are that authority figure or the person who's running it from the beginning. This is going to help everything run a little bit more smoothly. It's going to help you stay in control of the fight, right? Because if they're just swinging by themselves, it's sometimes, oh, wait, what happened? Wait, you did that? And then you're fighting again, and you're like, oh, no. And you start getting behind, and you're not paying attention well.
You want to be firm, you don't want to be harsh. You want to be like, hold on. You stand there, all right? What I see happens, anything else doesn't count. Ready? Go.
Yeah.
It's a different feel to, all right, well, okay, you're going to be over here, you're over here. Everybody ready? You ready? Ready? Lay on.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So there's got to be confirming this. The second thing
Hold
I
on, we
say,
got a question over
Real
here.
quick, and maybe we're going to go into this, but what about Iron Man or like the first stage of a World Sports tournament where time is an issue and the fighters may not be so comfortable waiting on the read?
right, so that's going to be a little bit of a different situation. If you're in an Ironman, it's kind of an expectation that the next person comes out, taps, and begins fighting. The thing is that is an expectation between both fighters across the board, right? In that situation, you just do your best to make the right calls on the shots. Because coming into a 1v1, the expectations are kind of like, well, this guy might be like, yeah, we'll just tap and swing, and this guy's like, well, give me a second or whatever. It's better that you step in and set how the pace of the tournament right there.
You can also do the exact same thing prior to the Iron Man starting with the whole lineup. You can lay down how it's going to go, and they can come in, and you can still say, when you come in, I'll say lay on, rather than tapping and immediately swinging, because giving them the chance to tap and then you telling them lay on when you're ready is not going to make an outcome. It's not going to change the outcome of how many wins you're getting in that 20 minutes.
Right, and there's something to that. If that's how you want to set it and you want to, that's okay. Just make sure you're communicating it before.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is that there's an accepted pace and that it is communicated and everyone goes into it like that. In a one-on-one that is not timed, I would almost in every situation like you to stop it, take control, have them set, and start it on your call, start the next fight on your call. You need to be in control of the situation.
And it's good for the fighters, too. When the fighters come into the field, they are worrying about dealing with their opponent. They don't need to be worried about setting up that tournament fight. You need to take that away from them.
Right.
That's not something they should have to deal with. Is this guy ready? Is this the time that we start? You know,
Right.
Take that off their shoulders and put that on you. That is your job.
Another thing, just as long as we're talking about it, I guess we can role play the situation later. Anyway, we'll just talk about it now because it's good. A big thing that I like to do is if you're going to have them tap in, which a lot of people want to tap in, I am very big on telling everyone, have them tap in, back up, and then you call lay on. The last thing you want to deal with is you go like, okay, tap in and fight, and they go, okay, tap. And they're like, I got it. And then you have to sit there and be like, well, technically by my rules, he was actually just being a dick and still won. Like, how do I call the in-between, right? So things like that, the more you take control, the start, right? And once again, this is not in a rude, demanding way, but just affirm. The more you take control of that start, the more you take the little things that are going to cause problems out of the tournament, right? And that's, a lot of that's going to be your job, is just negating as much of the possible issues as possible. All right. Then we say set expectations, okay? This is especially in higher risk tournaments, you know, like where there's more on the line. But
Kingdom level.
honestly, any tournament you can do this, especially the first round, is when the fighters come in, I like to tell them what my expectations from them are, okay? So for me personally, I like to communicate specifically that I want to make sure they are communicating anything that touches them, right? A graze is not a good shot. There are shots that will hit the shield and barely touch you, and it is not a good shot, right? But if I see someone taking that shot, knowing something hit them just barely, and continuing fighting without communicating, I will be of the assumption that they did not take a good shot, and I will call it on them. If you want to tell me afterwards, no, it wasn't hard enough, I will still stay firm on my call. You need to let me know, communicate as things happen, right? This is a big part of stopping situations that become problems in mini tournaments, right? That idea that, like, I thought I hit him, and he's like, oh no, it was just a graze, and it's, the fight's already ended. The person's already killed him, and now we're trying to back up out of things, decide, you know, like, oh, what happened? I don't like that. I like to make sure that we're keeping that out of it, right? So, when we bring people into the ring, we want to communicate expectations clearly from the beginning so that they don't have room to make these arguments.
And just because they feel like it's a graze doesn't mean that it's not a shot that we should call.
Right.
But they need to communicate why they're not taking that shot that someone might call on them, right? And I'm sure we've all seen it in a lot of fights. A lot of fighters, especially ones that respect each other, will go, "No, that was light, that was a graze," and you move on.
Right. Right. And there are, and like you said, there's situations, just in, it happens especially in tournaments, that there are things that you'll be like, no, that was light, there's no, it barely touched me. And then like 15 seconds later, you're like, why is my shoulder still stinging? Like, I probably should have taken that, right? So there are situations where, like, you're not, these people are not trying to cheat, right? That's one of the biggest things that I like to, there's situations where they are. I feel like 90% of sloughing is honest people making mistakes, or people thinking they hit someone and they didn't, right? So, all right. Next thing to do. Yes, after breathing. Okay. So, that's our lead up to the fight. Now we're going to start getting into the fight and what's going on. First thing we talk about is active reeving, right? This is super important. Too often, reeves pick their place to stand and they just watch a fight happen, right? And they do their best to call from there.
We've all seen it.
Right? It's not only have we all seen it, we probably all see it more than we see something different, right?
Here, can you stand up? Just pick your place right there, right?
Yep.
We're going to fight, right?
Yep.
We're going to rotate. Now, how can she see anything?
Right.
Right? Now you can see this shoulder, but what if it throws down here and it drops?
Right, I can't
Did
see
it?
it at all.
Right, exactly. So we need to make sure that we're moving at all times. Now,
Maintaining line of sight of those critical areas.
right. Assuming that you only have 2 reeves, which is kind of at least an amp guard standard, where should those 2 reeves be?
On either side of the 2 fighters, so
Wait,
not at your back.
Do you mean total or in a ring?
In a ring.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like that.
She's like, that's my amp guard standard is you have 2 reeds. End of sentence.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's fair.
And there are some tournaments that are like that. The
It's
Hammer
fair.
of God tournament is 1 reef per ring.
Yeah,
In a lot of
until-
cases until the
until-
During
semifinals.
the tens, the first part getting into the bracket.
Right.
Some of those guys fight and they don't even use a reeve. The reeve just happens to be there in case you want them.
Right. Yeah. So, right. Basically, if you have two reeves, like you said, on either side, basically centered on either side, or you can possibly, if it's two shield men, you can possibly sit a little bit to the back side of the shield, just a little bit. So I'm not, you know, if I'm on his side and this is his shield, I'm not going to sit here, but here's not a bad thing because it gives me a little bit better angle for the behind the shield shot, which is one of the ones that's a little hard to tell, right? And I still have a good angle behind his shield as well because it's going to be open and deep, right? But from the most part, on their side is where you want to be. Now where that changes is when you get into one reeve, right? If you were a single reeve, if you were fighting a righty on a righty, then you are probably going to just try to sit centered, all right, on one side and hope you can do it. One thing that I like to do is because you're going to be far out, right? I'm sitting out here. If we're rotating like this, right, it's sometimes hard to be running around, right? You try to feel that sometimes, and if you're right here and we're circling and you see us circle hard, instead just go that way.
Just go the other side.
Right? And try to stay on the side. Where this is going to change is if it's righty on lefty. Okay? Righty on lefty, where do we want to stand?
On their sword sides.
Always on their sword side. Probably 80% of the action that is going to occur is going to be here, and if you are on this side, it is going to be behind a shield, right?
Or the body for that.
Right, or the body, right.
Yeah.
So you've got this wall sitting right here, and we're fighting everything right here. So it is super important, righty versus lefty, that you always have someone on this side. On top of this, when you are dealing with one stronger reeve and one weaker reeve, we'll talk about coaching your other reeve, right, a little bit. But if you know you're the stronger reeve, try to stay to the sword side, right? Okay? All right, in fact, we can just go into coaching your other reeve right now. So a lot of times with your other reeve, if you are the strong one, right, you are the person, very much like your fighter, talk to them about expectations early on, right? Tell them, I'm going to stay on this side, I need you to stay on this side. If you have specific things like, hey, I really, from this side, I'm going to struggle to see what's hitting under the board over there, so I need you to really focus on what's going under the board over there. Like, I feel pretty confident that from this angle, I can catch most of the other stuff. That shot's going to be difficult. Let them know so that they have less to worry about. Because if they're trying to see everything, they're much less likely to actually catch it. So try to get them focused on that. Another thing that you need to understand is, especially with inexperienced reeves, they are going to struggle to step up and make calls, right? So sometimes, say it's that under the board shot that you can't really see. It's important for you to say, hey, that shot under the board looked like it got up kind of high. Did you see if it got up high enough? Talking directly to your other reeve, right? Say, one of the important parts about this psychology is not saying like, hey, that hit over there, because a lot of times people are going to be a little uncomfortable saying yes or no, right? If it looked high, like it might have been high enough to you, if you say, hey, that looked like it might have been high enough, could you tell? They're a little more likely to be comfortable saying yes or no, right? Because you've made the assertion already, so they're not making they're not doing anything.
You're not
Decision.
influencing what they saw.
Right.
Yeah,
You
they're
say-
not making a decision,
when
they're
you
just
say
agreeing with you yes
That
or
was
no.
high and it hit. What did you see? You're automatically, even if they might not have even saw, but you're automatically telling them that it happened, so they
Right.
will see something that might have not happened.
Right, you don't want to do that. That's the other side of things. So you don't want to do that, as well as you don't want to say, I couldn't see it, what'd you see? Now, sometimes you have to say that, right? I'm not telling you to lie and say anything that you didn't. If you couldn't see it, then you have to trust them, and if they say they didn't see it, that's fine. But if you think something might have been high enough, sometimes communicating that to them will free them up and feel more comfortable about making a call one way or the other because you're the one who's broached the subject, right? So that's the little bit that I got on coaching your other read.
And remember, like, the rule book protects reads. In the rule book, it says no matter what the rule is, the reads call is final.
Right.
Period. I mean, if you make a bad call, that's not something you want to do, but it is still your call to make.
Mm-hmm. Which is a perfect segue into making bad calls.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, I like to look at tournament reading very much like any other sport, right? And I think it's what we do wrong, is that our reads are not like any other sport. In any other sport, reads make all the calls, right? It's not, there's no, you know,
we don't ask football players if they got the first down. We don't ask the...
Like, you don't ask the defense, hey, do you think he crossed that line?
Yeah.
Right?
You don't ask the player if they fumbled.
Right, exactly. Now,
that was a fumble? Like, I feel like it was a fumble.
Now, sportsmanship.
What did you see?
Yeah, exactly. Sportsmanship, luckily, is a huge part of our game. It's a part of football. It's not the word I'm looking for. Like, honor-based calling, right, is not a part of any other sport. It's a huge part of our game, and it's a benefit to our game. It's a great part of our game. But when things are all riding on the line, you need to understand that our reads need to be stepping up and taking control and being an authority figure, right? They need to be making the calls. We need to be treating it more like a sport, because that is the most sport-like thing that we do, right? So, like any other sport, you are going to miss calls and you're going to make bad calls, all right? Here's what I got to say about it, right? So first of all, it is way more important to make a bad call than to think you saw something and not make the call. If you think you saw something, but are saying, I can't tell you how many times I see a read go like, I thought I hit him in the arm, but I guess not. My words to them, if I'm being rude, is then sit down and let me get someone else up here, because you only have one job, right? That's my like rude words for it, but basically a lot of it has to do with being insecure about making the call, and I understand that, right? But you have to understand that that is what you have to do up there. And sometimes it's going to fall on you that you've made a bad call. Sometimes you're going to have to deal with people unhappy with you. These are very high-stress situations with people who are very competitive working on things. It's not always going to go smoothly. It's something we're going to have to deal with.
Have you made a bad call?
Yeah.
Made plenty of bad calls.
Right. And so that kind of moves...
By far, our good calls outweigh our bad calls.
I like to believe it.
Like, if you're making all bad calls, there's a problem, and you definitely need to sit down and
You want to move on after the call, whether it was good or bad. You want to move on after that and go on to the next one and not think about that either. You have to. The next fight is completely over. And you
normally, if it's a bad call, you're not going to figure that out until days later.
You don't want to sit and dwell on it and contemplate it and let that affect the next call. Like, well, it looked like it hit on the last one. I didn't say anything.
Right.
You talked about having a stronger Reeve and then maybe somebody else who's just less strong or less competent.
Yes.
Is it important in situations where there might be calls that there's a primary Reeve that's going to make the final decision? And, you know, again, back to the sports analogy, there's line judges and then there's referees, right, who makes the final call.
Right. So
I do that, or?
I think that there's probably some merit to it.
Yeah.
But we would have to change what we currently do to make that happen. So I wouldn't necessarily teach y'all you need to be the head ref or something, because it's not what we already do.
We're not set up for that as a society yet.
But as a system, I like the idea of having a head ref.
So what about when the Reeves don't agree? I guess that's really what I'm getting at, is how do you resolve it when the Reeves don't agree? If you don't have I'm the Reeve.
It depends on the situation, and you have to go situation by situation. If I say I think that hit him, he said it like, you know, player says that didn't hit me, and I say, no, I saw that hit you, and he goes, no, I had an angle, it was a block, then I should be willing to say, okay, I understand, and back up, right? If instead it's like, you know,
it has to be worked out between the reefs, and that's what it comes down to. And
Right.
you need to do it with as least bias as possible, and the most honest result that you can see happen.
Right.
Right?
I would tell you more often than not, I do not like let's refight it. But there are situations, if both refs can't come to an agreement and the players can't come to an agreement, that you sit back and you have to say, let's fight or refight it, right? I often think let's refight it is a cop-out to not wanting to stand by your guns and say, no, I saw you get hit. You know, you go like, I saw you get hit, and the player's like, I thought I hit him, and then he was like, no, I caught that and I hit him. And then it's like, well, I really thought it. And he goes, you want to just refight it? And they're like, yeah, let's refight it. Whoa. The other guy won, and we just took away his win and tried to refight it. It feels good for you because you got something. It feels good for the player because he just went from a loss to refighting it. But the other guy who really thought he won, and you really thought he won as the Reeve, just got his win taken away and you're refighting it, right? So I think refight is a trap that a lot of Reeves fall into that we want to avoid unless there's just truly a situation where the Reeves can't get it, you couldn't see what happened at all, the players couldn't get on it. There come situations where it's just like, let's refight it, guys. Like, there's no easy way to solve this. There's no clear solution.
And it shouldn't be a common thing. If you have two Reeves that are disagreeing over shots, there's probably something else going on.
Right, and that's probably where we might need to be coaching more Reeves, or we need better coaching for the Reeves. It's going to be a situation that comes on every now and then, right? We're a very new group when it comes to tourney reading in any serious capacity at all, right? There's going to be situations that come across we can't agree, right? So we're going to go with some dealing with confrontation, okay? So, I've got some different stuff about this. First of all, there is a belief that basically us fighting, right? We get done, you make a call, and I go like, what? No, it didn't hit me in the waist. Like, it hit me dead here in the leg, right? There's this kind of belief that that's wrong, right? That I shouldn't be saying that. And while in a perfect world, there's some truth to that, there is no sport where when someone has a call made on them, there's not someone going like, what do you mean, ref? I didn't do that. Because I think it's unreasonable to expect that people in these high-stress situations with huge amounts on the line to just take a call, which, by the way, we already discussed, you might be wrong. It may really have hit me in the leg, right? And I am now losing an important fight to me because of your bad call. So I think it is understandable that there will be conflict from time to time. As much as you would like to be able to say, well, the Reeve said something, that's always the case.